Welcome back to another video. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, PlayStation-centric podcast recently had someone called SnowBike Mike, and apparently this person is a huge Xbox fan, into Xbox. And Greg Miller, who is the host of Kinda Funny Games, I don't think it would be a stretch to say that Greg is a enthusiastic PlayStation fan. But there was some interesting discussion on this podcast and two different opposing points of view that I think pretty much sum up where Xbox is and possibly where Xbox is going. I don't know, but I found these two topics on the podcast very interesting. So let's listen to the first one, and then we'll talk about it. And then the second one, I think you're going to be very, very surprised. I know I was. I couldn't believe that Greg Miller, of all people, said this when it came to Xbox and PlayStation. So first up, SnowBike Mike's problem with Xbox.
What is Mike's beef with Xbox right now?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of like a venting session, like get it out, because over the past couple of months, over the past year, Xbox has been in a different place. Xbox is moving a different direction. And some of us are totally on board for that. We see the future of the business. We're happy for the business. We're happy with that. But also there's players out there, maybe similar to myself, that have to make a decision, have to kind of start looking at the future of where do I stand as an Xbox player or just a gamer itself. And I'm a little worried about where I am right now. And I want to start off by saying I am very happy and I'm impressed with the vision of what Xbox is doing business-wise.
Okay.
But as a player now, I've battled with this, Bless, for the past couple of months.
Sounds like a breakup.
Am I invested still in this ecosystem where I should be buying the next generation of Xbox? Or with the moves that they've been making with their first-party titles, Andy, should I move on to buy just a PlayStation? I can only buy so many consoles because, as you know, my bank account is low.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can't just keep buying things. Or am I just a dedicated PC player? I also have to look at myself and say that. I have to look at myself and say, am I a dedicated PC player that gets the benefits of all the worlds because Xbox is going day and date? PlayStation's clearly showing their hand that they're going to start putting more and more first-party titles on PC. Is that the best place to play?
But PC is an Xbox.
But my problem is, Bless, is I have this worry that we're putting all these Xbox first-party titles over on PlayStation. Should I just be buying that console? Am I too deep into the Xbox world that I can't get out of this because I've spent thousands upon thousands of dollars?
I always find it interesting when someone who's a hardcore fan of something starts to question their hardcoreness of whatever it is they're into. But some of these concerns are valid, especially the digital library and the games. I purchased thousands of games on Xbox over the years, and the idea that they still are accessible to me on the console, that's important. On the console, they just show up there. Well, that's an indication that Microsoft is all in on game preservation and giving you access to the things that you purchase. Conversely, when you look at PlayStation, everything that I own on PlayStation 3 is gone. Everything. I either subscribe to a service, doesn't that sound familiar? To play those games through the cloud, or I'm just SOL. So I get it. I get the idea that there's a concern with the digital library going forward. And I made a video about this, Xbox talking about Play Anywhere and cloud streaming, and every game that you purchase is also able to be streamed on any device. So you still have it. Your save files can go anywhere, so you can still play those games. But it's important to make the distinction that if the Xbox console goes away, it's not okay, Microsoft, Phil Spencer, or anybody else who works here to tell me or anybody else that, well, your digital library is safe because you can just go to your phone, or you can just go to a PC, or you can just buy a handheld made by somebody else and access it there. That's not okay. So I get his concerns. He talked about the idea of trying to figure out what kind of a fan he is when it comes to Xbox. And to me, that's just a lot of the console war and the social media pounding that keeps happening every single day. It's not easy to find positive Xbox coverage on social media. It's very easy to go online and find things about, well, they didn't grow enough here, so it's all over. Or they grew a little bit here, and that's not enough. It was interesting to listen to SnowBike Mike's point of view as somebody who's like super hardcore Xbox. And if Microsoft and Xbox are starting to lose people like that, or even presenting situations where people like that start to think about Are they making the right decision? That's never a good thing. You want your fan base to be like satiated. You want them to feel full. And after the developer direct, I don't know anybody that's complaining about Microsoft first party anymore. So when you look at the first party output for just the first half of this year, and then what Sony, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how you make that distinction and say, well, I'm going to buy a PlayStation over an Xbox. The problem is PlayStation has become Apple. PlayStation has become this thing that is just synonymous with people. You buy it because everyone else is purchasing it. When I think of sneakers, the first name that pops into my head is Nike. Why? There are countless other brands out there, but Nike established themselves over the years. And even if Nike made a product that wasn't really as good as some other products, people would still purchase it because it's Nike. The same situation happened with Apple. Back in the day, Apple was this startup company. Nobody really gave them any chance against the mighty Microsoft and Windows. And then today, it's literally just like a piece of jewelry that people buy just to have because everyone purchases it. Great position to be in, but it also leads to stagnation. And it can also lead to extreme cost and a cadence of output that is just not great when it comes to feeding consumers. So you have to weigh all of this stuff in there. But I did find it interesting that he was talking about PC as an option. He was talking about handhelds as an option. He talked about the Xbox handheld as an option. And then some of the people on the panel said, well, you're still an Xbox gamer. You just sign into the Xbox app through the PC and you can play all of these games. But for me personally, and probably for him, it's that library of games, and I want them accessible on a console. I don't want to say to myself, well, Microsoft made all of my purchases available on a phone if I want to stream them, or on a tablet, or on my television if I buy a stick, or I can purchase them all on the PlayStation. Here's another one, and he's probably joking, but he talked about his bank account being low. Well, if your bank account is low, why wouldn't Xbox and Game Pass be a choice for you? It just doesn't make any sense for me. Take some games that just released. Eternal Strands, Ninja Gaiden Black 2 Remake. Eternal Strands is $40. Ninja Gaiden Black 2 is $50 on PlayStation. After tax, that's well over $100 for just those two games. That's 5 months of Game Pass Ultimate. Now, I'm not saying you should subscribe to a subscription service. Subscription services are better than owning games. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying objectively, you would have to know that the games coming out that are full price, that you're going to absolutely love them to make that big expenditure versus just subscribing to something, being able to play them. Objectively, that's a much better value proposition for people. So there are a lot of things to take into account when it comes to, are you a fan of Xbox and what they're doing in terms of their ecosystem, in terms of what they're offering, in terms of the hardware, in terms of the streaming, in terms of the save files, in terms of the PC, in terms of maybe a handheld in the future? Or are you just somebody who wants to buy a physical product and have every single thing locked to that product that says Xbox only on it? I don't know if that's something that's going to continue in the future for these high-end console manufacturers like PlayStation and Microsoft and Xbox, especially with the money they spend on their first-party games. But I don't know everything. I could be completely wrong on this, but I found this very interesting that somebody like SnowBike Mike, a hardcore Xbox fan, would be asking these questions. What's very interesting now is Greg Miller's answer at the end of this podcast when it comes to PlayStation. I did not expect this, and it is very, very interesting coming from somebody who is at the extreme end of love for PlayStation, the same way that it was very interesting seeing somebody who was at the extreme end of love for Xbox, Snowbike Mike, say the things he said. So let's listen to what Greg has to say here, and then we'll talk about it.
There's going to be a day where it is suddenly a flip, where it is like, oh, PlayStation, what is PlayStation doing? And it is that they are still so archaic, and they are still their box and their exclusives and da-da-da. You will get to a point where this cloud strategy, every screen is an Xbox, we're partnering with PC, we're talking to Steam, we're using OS. Like, you are going to have a day where that suddenly, I feel like that clicks into place, and you do look at PlayStation and go, oh, you're fucked. You didn't do it fast enough. Now, they are going to PC with older games. Clearly, there's a pipeline. Clearly, if when this would get to that point, they could flip a switch, for lack of a better term, and be like, cool, yes, our exclusives are coming to PC day and date. But even then, it would be the thing of, cool, hopefully my Xbox thing that boots on the side can do it, right? Because that's what you're talking about. You're talking about what Paris is talking about of having a dual booting Xbox, that suddenly I can play Spider-Man on my Xbox. You know what I mean? Like, That's an exciting proposition. When PlayStation would have to inevitably give up the ground or open up streaming or do whatever they do, then your Xbox would be doing that as well, which is a very fascinating conversation.
Interesting, wasn't it? I've been saying this for a while, and this is part of the reason why I've come around a bit to Microsoft's strategy and the fact that it's different and a little bit more exciting to me right now than what PlayStation is doing. When you're going to stay in this high-end market, when you're going to produce these boxes that cost a ton of money to create, when you're going to, more importantly, create these games that cost so much money to create, you're putting yourself in a situation where inevitably it's just not going to make sense for you to release it on one platform and lock it there, because you cannot withstand the time it takes for those games locked to a platform to break even and then start making money. Again, let's reiterate what Shuhei Yoshida said. You have to buy remakes and remasters of games they've already created in one generation in a new generation to help them fund making new games. Now, that's a strategy, but so is either lowering the cost of the games that you make, which isn't going to go over well for PlayStation fanatics. Like I say this all the time. When you're going to throw out that Microsoft and Game Pass cultivated an audience that won't buy games, you've got to look at the opposite side to that. And Sony and PlayStation have cultivated an audience that will not buy any game other than a Sony first-party game that costs $300 or $400 million. That's a problem. And if you're going to stay in that market, you're going to have to diversify where you're getting a return from. It's just basic economics. You have to sell 80 million consoles to maybe sell 2 million copies of Astrobot. You have to sell how many more million consoles to break even with something like Intergalactic? How long is Intergalactic going to take to create? Well, it'll come out maybe 5.5 years into the PlayStation 5 generation. It probably cost over $300 million. It's probably got to sell at least 15 million copies to break even and then start making money. And you can bet the farm that Sony is going to remake and remaster that on the PlayStation 6 to follow Shuhei Yoshida's strategy, rather than eventually just release these games day and date on PC, which is absolutely going to happen. And once that happens, and it already kind of has, once that happens and the money starts to roll in and the subscription service starts to roll in, they're slowly rolling in these first-party titles into the subscription service. I know you're going to say, well, it's 6 months to a year later. If it's 6 months to a year later, 6 months to a year later for PC, now it's like 4 months to PC, then it's day and date. Eventually, this stuff, something has to give. Either they lower the cost of what they do hardware-wise and first-party games-wise, or they do what Microsoft is doing. Very interesting that even Greg Miller can see this idea of everything everywhere, but making an ecosystem and a product the exclusive, not the game. The features of an ecosystem could be an exclusive. The features of Game Pass can be an exclusive. If the next Xbox hardware is a hybrid and allows you to sign into other stores and download games from those stores in addition to the Xbox store, that would be a hardware-specific exclusive feature, not the games, but the features of the hardware. Imagine being able to sign into Steam and download Spider-Man 2 or whatever Sony decides to put there day and date. That would be insane. It was interesting to have these 2 points of views. It was very interesting to hear Snowbike Mike talk about the struggles he's having. And it was extremely interesting to hear Greg Miller say what he said when it came to Xbox's strategy and the eventuality of it becoming everyone's strategy that stays in that high-end game. And the only 2 people that are in that high-end game are Microsoft and Sony. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching the video. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.